You know that.
I have a pencil.
That's right.
Recording?
I don't know.
Right. Alicia, is it recording? Okay, we're recording.
All right.
The general announcement that we make to everyone, we're happy you're here, and the owl can pick up noises, so not exactly quiet, but just know if you say something, we can move to you and word it down, so feel free to participate in whatever way.
Feels appropriate.
Feels good.
All right. Does everybody know? Okay, go ahead. Thanks. So you want to let folks know about what you have in your hand.
If you go across the hall there. Thank you.
I don't think so, but maybe. So we all just provided our copies of our counter package proposal from our last session on the 23rd of September. We have some adjustments on Article 29. If y'all could turn to those pages and we can make those adjustments to what our counter proposal says. And on the second line where it says 1,300 and 75, it should be, you should adjust that 3 to be in a 4. So the total number is 1,475. And so change the 1375, regular digits to be 1475 inside the brackets. And then after the comma, after 2024, 2025, comma, it should be 1,525, much as the digits say inside the bracket per month. And then on the next line, after 2025, 2026, comma, it should be, instead of 1,600, it should be 1,500 and $75, much like it says for digits on the next line. For 26, 27. Was there something else in there?
That's it. And we clarified this orally when we presented, and I believe in all the information that you have sent out, it's the correct numbers. We just wanted to make sure that we got it squared away.
Yeah, I remember that discussion.
Yep.
Do we want to change it to 1,600 so it's consistent with the ones above? Instead of 1,600, or does it matter?
So 1,600 is no longer a number because we're going up by 50, keeping with what everyone's got this year because the pool paid out 100%.
Got it.
So we go from 1475 to 1525 to 1575, and that's the end of it. In your original proposal, you had put $50 on this year. We don't need it because the pool covered it 100%.
All right,
All right, we are ready.
ready? So are we? Anybody else need our 35? We got 35. I got 2 extra copies.
I'm good.
We've not come. Didn't think this is Angela had it.
Do we have any extras of the? Agree? Yeah,
Agree.
yeah, we have it.
I had, you. Excellent. Thank you. Ted is still dealing with an IEP. That's a little hard.
Throw the whole system out of way.
And I will say while you're passing things out, I sent a link text to Eric. That just basically thanks your team for the last time, because usually I will send all of them the day after, but I had to take. And to make sure you all use it the last. We felt the last, section was really productive and.
I appreciate your,
Staying late and appreciate my appreciation.
yes, it was a tough day.
It was a tough day. We all worked.
Yeah. I bring in my portable air conditioner and stuff. Just for our caucus.
We will not have anybody.
What?
No one from the location person.
Yeah. Good morning. You see that? These are not the air conditioning units.
Okay, I think we have them all. And, where do you want to start? 24?
24 is where we usually start.
That's. So, moving to page 2. Here. We've decided to, that we needed more information about the identified on the work group calendar. We felt like last time when we had the discussion, some new things came up, which, we just were not in agreement. We just needed more information. So identified on the work group calendar for the, early release days, felt like those are already identified on the work.
You mean the late arrival days?
Sorry.
On Wednesday?
Late arrival Wednesdays.
Yes.
We just would like to know if that's all that we're asking, or if you're asking for the member directed days and the district directed days to be identified, or if this is, we just needed, that came up last conversation. We just, that threw us for a loop a little bit.
I don't see it being a big change in practice. We already have language that says that if you want people to not be able to flex their days, you have to give them notice on campus. Right, and that's provided at the start of the year. And so we already, as you said, we're getting things from our schools really that's saying these are the late start dates, like they're Wednesdays. And so the ones that are member directed, the ones that are not member directed, they're either collaboration or they are district PD. Just having those on the calendar, I mean, they're set by contract. Right, I mean, I don't know that we would have a big issue, like if a collaboration day and a member, like a PD day got switched, we would want to talk about that.
So I think that's what came up with us, was that flexibility around, switching this. Does somebody want to talk about what that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was curious if you could give an example of what was missing. Because we heard different things, last time we heard, well, we just need to know what are the late start designations, like which days are late start, and then there was also, well, we also want to know what is that late start? As you mentioned, teacher directed are already set, whether it's an admin directed or collaboration, neither of those days would be able to be flexed anyway. So the flex question kind of disappears at that point. So I think we were all just trying to wrap our head around what information isn't being provided already, I guess.
And then I also was wondering if this is just language that's left over from the previous proposals that might have been in there kind of with the,
No,
okay. So just know that that's. You want to come with something on your proposal back, that's. Okay. Thank you. Oh,
And
go
we
ahead.
do want principals to have some opportunity to trade those days on different schedules. Like someone's available on this day and not this day, then some ability to flip flop that. I think it was actually that I had an example in list of work, but I don't remember what it is in terms of recent flip flop.
It's interesting because I know, as a classroom teacher, I do look ahead on the schedule and I'm like, oh, if I got collaboration Wednesday, I know that's a day I'm gonna be able to plan an assessment or work out the next unit. And if my principal just like decided on Tuesday night, oh, we're gonna switch that around, that could totally mess up my prep for that week, right? Because that work still needs to happen, right? So your examples that you're bringing up are brand new. We haven't talked about this before, where an administrator could just be randomly switching the purpose of Wednesdays on the calendar. That's not something we're interested in. We want those set up beginning of the year. Here's what we're doing, right? And if there's something long-term, like we're, a few months out type of thing, hey, I think we're gonna need to switch this around, everybody, right? That probably could be something that staff would be okay with, but, to just give unilateral control over those Wednesdays without any timelines for notification with people. Regardless, as you said, Ryan, yeah, it doesn't affect people's ability to flex, but it certainly affects our ability to prepare for kids and to be ready to teach, right? Those collaboration Wednesdays are time that teachers are depending on and planning on using to get ready for the classroom. As opposed to if I'm sitting in the library and getting PD for an hour, that's not, right?
And I would say, I would believe the current contract gives you the right to switch days where I cannot flex with a week's notice. So if you gave me a week's notice, you could swap them. But
Yep.
the day before thing would be a no-go right now.
Well, you can't flex on a collaboration day anyway.
Correct.
So we're not switching with teacher directed days.
I mean, and I'll just be I was thinking about whether I should be blunt, but I'll be blunt. As a teacher, right, I got stuff sometimes I gotta do. I gotta go see a doctor, I gotta go do this, I gotta go do that. And when
I
would
see
the,
where you're going.
yeah, when would the district like me to miss? Right, I mean, that's the question. I mean, when would you like me to miss? You want me to miss when kids are there and miss class? Or would you like me to miss on a collaboration or a PD day? And so I know a lot of teachers make those decisions, right? And I would rather miss when kids aren't there, right? Rather than when kids are there. And so that's another thing that causes us to want to know.
So I guess this gets back to what is not being provided. I'm curious, like I'm just thinking in my own building. And I think it's true with the other two high schools too. We have pretty much a common late start designation. We kind of agreed that we're doing ours the same. That's shared with staff that first week of August, right? Is it written in stone and nothing could shift? No, it could shift based on need, but by and large, my staff know months in advance, is it gonna be a collaboration or is it gonna be an admin directive? And I guess I'm curious, is what you're hearing, that that's not kind of the practice in some buildings, that they're not getting that information, even if it could be switched, they're not getting, this is what we are thinking right now for the year.
Not on the timeline you're describing, first week of
Okay.
August.
I mean, and again, and what you say the high schools are providing is all we're asking for, right? Which I think for the most part is already contractual language. I don't know that we meant for that to be overly contentious.
Got it.
All right. We are moving on. So page 2 and page 3 kind of go together. And we heard last time, pretty loudly that teachers need more time to, have. I just defined it as more planning time, just that time that they can direct it and to do stuff for their classroom, different from a member directed Wednesday, but more of a. So we are agreeing to most of the language in number 3 to be able to give 2 Mondays in the year, the day after spring break and the day after winter break, as late starts, and we understand those late starts to be similar schedule, identical schedule to what Wednesdays are, but those would be on the Monday after spring break and the one Monday after Christmas break. And putting the language back to those 2 Wednesday extra ones that are in the page 2. So striking the language September, October, April, and the 9. And putting those into the, adding 2 more early release days in the year, which would be after winter break and after spring break.
So if it was a Monday immediately after spring break, or obviously Monday after, spring break, or Monday after winter break.
Or
God forbid we have a
Or
Wednesday.
Tuesday, or whatever the
Day is the return, it would be a late start.
And member directed.
a member directed late.
Are we still running a late start that Wednesday as well?
Correct.
So it's basically adding to teacher directed late starts, but not taking away any collaboration or Wednesday late starts. That's the effect it has.
And some of the, I mean, there's a lot of thinking that we really went back and forth on this. We really value students not missing any more instruction. They've already cutting it pretty close with our seniors with the Division 22. So rather than having that full day as teacher directed, we compromised there and had that as a late start. Also, I wasn't here when the late starts were discussed with the community, but it's my understanding that we really want to reserve those late start Wednesdays for the collaboration time. What we promised the community and the staff for those to be. So we figured we could use Mondays as that kickoff for, it's been a long break, similar to what you guys are proposing, kids can listen a little bit to get restarted. So that's where. Agreeing to the language about the alternative. You with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Alternative schedules, we did strike language and added a little bit on that one. Number C,
Rents, letter C.
on page 3. Agreeing to most of the language there, the district and association agree to form a committee to review best practices around school schedules and the student learning day. The committee will generate proposals and we struck for the district and association to review. But to review for possible implementation, the district may add representatives of other associations or stakeholders to the committee. Again, we're going back to the change and major changes in school schedules for the district as a community. It impacts more than just licensed staff, but also classified staff and our parents in our community. So just wanted to be able to have the flexibility to invite other stakeholders into that conversation. Page 4. We're in agreement on grading period to be performed remotely. Our grading may be performed remotely and agreeing to that half day as well for progress reports. Page 5, we're in agreement on the $35 an hour for the curriculum rates paid. Agreement on page 6, change of language for there. And we are striking the language on page 7 for the schedule. And for a couple of reasons, we are right now in a grievance around elementary MTSS and tier 2 meetings that elementary principals are asking teachers to have to talk about student data, to as a proactive and preventative measure for students to hopefully not have to be recommended to special education so that those meetings can happen. And that scheduled language, may or may not include. Well, pending arbitration. that might not.
Well, in your last proposal, this was something that you would agree with.
We had found some new information since then that has happened. We were under a different understanding of what that meant, but some recent things have come about to where we thought that we were agreeing to. I can share emails and
Okay,
things
so
along those lines, but
do you mind sharing what,
yeah, it is around the, what we originally believed was that the schedule was just, folks will have things that just what it says. But recent communication has kind of brought to light that if meetings aren't scheduled in advance, especially these tier 2 meetings, then principals may not have the flexibility to be meetings with their.
What do you mean, what do you mean when you say in advance?
I'm just I can bring the email with me, but Mark, you can speak to it. I mean, we've been going kind of back and forth on the grievance. I did bring our grievance around, and I just thought maybe this is something that we need to read to an arbitrator. rather than him.
And ultimately, members still get their 525 guaranteed
For
minutes.
sure.
There's 300 that are uninterruptible. And it might mean that one of those days, it's a different day than another day for that weekly prep based on when other meetings and things happen, but it's not a change in the amount of prep that a member has.
There is no change in time.
yeah, I understand that. It's just, it's definitely a surprise because, you know, the thing for our members that's important is knowing when. One of my biggest concerns for, especially my elementary members, and that's what this is about, is frequently, they're not really tracking their 525 minutes. So knowing when that's gonna be scheduled was gonna be definitely something that they could look forward to, that this is the time of my day that I know that it's gonna fall, I can depend on it, and nothing's gonna be, you know, shoved into that time.
Those things, elementary, you guys would
Yeah,
have to
I
speak to
don't
that.
know, Sean, if you wanna talk about how you kind of created schedules, like to show where the prep falls, but it might, there's some days where it might be that there's a morning meeting and another day that there might not be, or something that happens after school that might need to take place.
Yeah, I think.
That you can
as
show where the
well.
prep happens.
Yeah, we create at the beginning of the year just to ensure that these minutes are met with our union reps. I meet with them and based on our schedule, so some weeks it's more time. And we account for like 2 meetings a week, which is rare, for teachers. So, I mean, it should be able to be really clearly laid out, but I think as far as with, the scheduled meetings, most of the time we don't have 2 meetings a week.
Again, all I would say is I don't know of sub 10, a handful of elementary educators who actually track their 300 minutes. None of them. Do they know if they're being asked to go to meetings that are infringing upon that? No, they don't. Do they know how many minutes they have left in any given week? And so that's the thing about the schedule is it would have guaranteed that they get their 300 minutes. And I don't think any of them have the idea of getting their 300 minutes or not. in a given week.
So is it more about upfront communicating, like, here's where the minutes fall?
It's math every week, right? I mean, if they're gonna track their minutes, they're tracking Okay, I've got a prep period, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, some Wednesdays, some not Wednesdays. That's 25 minutes, and so that's 100 minutes. So they need to be getting 200 minutes of protected time outside of the student contact day. Right, and so in there, 5 days, that's 40 minutes a day that they should be getting protected. Now, many of the mornings, right, would count. But anytime they have any sort of meeting, an IEP meeting, a parent meeting, a grade level meeting, or whatever the case may be, that eats away at that time, and they would need to track and subtract that away from how much time they have available, and nobody does that. And I'm not gonna say nobody, but we'll say almost nobody.
So with your intent with this language, really to be more just transparent, like if you're gonna have this meeting, or if you're gonna have a meeting, this is where you will make up that prep time. Would that fall under your concept of a schedule? Like if this happens, this is where you will get that time back.
So, and I am just off the cuff saying this, right, but you could say Monday mornings, K1 is not gonna have any meetings. Tuesday mornings, second's not gonna have any meetings, and so on, right? So you would just block out this time. And that's my time that I'm not gonna have any meetings. It's dedicated prep time. I know it's coming. I know there's not gonna be anything that gets in the way. And however many minutes I need for that week, which would be again, the 200 for most buildings, they just get scheduled out. Right now, I mean, teachers aren't, I don't think, always getting it. And then they contact me and I'm like, well, can you document what you have done for the last month? And list every meeting that you've had and every time that you've been asked to do something, and their answer is no. Right, and so that's the issue that we run into, is that they don't know if they're getting it, they can't document it, if they're getting it or not, and so that's the issue that we see. High schools, they don't have this issue, middle schools, we don't have this issue.
Elementary teachers are the only group that get the majority of their prep time outside of student contact.
Protected prep.
And
Well,
it's just so easy for things to eat into that time, right? A little bit here, 10 minutes there, 15 minutes there, quick meeting, oh, we need to talk about this, right? It's just, and next thing you know, you're not really getting any prep time before or after school.
Okay. I think we can move on.
Yep.
I don't think there's many of the changes on page 8. We've agreed to A, B, C. Don't think we added anything. We agree to that language on page 8.
Yep.
And page 9.
Yep.
Agree to that language there. The language on page 10.
Yep.
And page 11. I'm gonna have Brian speak to this, because our. And this page might actually connect. You'll see it connect in 31.
Yeah, I don't know that there's all that much to add, other than obviously we didn't incorporate the class size threshold language that you guys brought in the chart. And I think I've talked a couple of times about how I think it's important to view this what it is, which is not really a limiter on class size, or would not have the effect of having smaller class sizes. I think people hear that and they get excited for that. It's a different mode of compensation. It's a structure of compensating people based on how many students are in their class, which we just fundamentally don't agree with, that kind of switch over in the concept of how people are compensated, because it provides for overages when those things are exceeded. So they routinely would be, because it would cost less to pay the overage than it would to hire a complete additional teacher. So what it would effectively do is not reduce people's classes, but it would simply change who was making what. It would change our fundamental mode of compensating right now, which is largely a uniform compensation based on credits and degrees earned and steps on the salary schedule. And it would instead change it to a model of how many students you have in your class. And so, you know, we have made changes to our salary proposal, so you'll see those changes there. We've decided to kind of keep with the more traditional salary structure and put additional resources into that salary schedule. We think that it's the most people and it's a better way to go about it.
And in 31, you'll see a bump in that. For special education teachers.
Yeah, your caseload language touched on the special ed folks, and so we have proposed an increase in the stipend for those positions, recognizing additional work involved there. So when we get to 31, you'll see that piece as well. The last thing I would say on it, I think that it has been borne out in the place. Very, very few contracts have this type of language. I can think of 3. And the lived experience has been not small class sizes, it's been simply payment of overages at different areas, sometimes unintended, and sometimes not where they were expected. So I think that's been the experience of that language.
Brian, have you seen any districts that target certain areas and really prioritize them when it comes to class size? Sure.
Yeah,
Some examples.
I mean, just as a not industry expert, I mean, but industry expert in a way, but not in other ways. You know, I mean, most districts are going to target their K1, 2s to have lower class sizes for sure. I think many districts have also an equity staffing model where they target some schools in their districts to intentionally have smaller class sizes. And that necessarily results in larger class sizes at other places in that district, which also makes things like a kind of a rigid number system also difficult because it doesn't account for that. Okay, we need more FTE at this building based on the students that we're trying to serve there. And that's going to result in higher class sizes at other buildings. So those would be the 2 main ways that I've seen most districts do it is some form of an equity staffing model, and then those lower primary grades getting usually a lower class size than elsewhere.
Have you seen anybody take advantage of the new change to state law, bargaining law that says title schools right now can be a mandatory subject of negotiations when it comes to class size?
Yeah.
Non-title schools.
I mean, for me, that hasn't been a big impact. It came up as an issue in the PPS situation only because we were at strike there, but it's very difficult to bargain. You know, only the Title I schools would have these numbers and the others won't. You know, my method even before that change in the law, my method had never been to refuse to bargain or, you know, declare it permissive and refuse to bargain. I think these are conversations to have at the bargaining table, and rather than get wrapped up in like, this is permissive, this is mandatory. I mean, we haven't called that out throughout this bargain, even though this would apply uniformly to all of your schools, you know, your proposal. So it really hasn't impacted much to me and I don't know if Bruce's experience different, but in the application of it, it hasn't, you know.
There's reluctance to bargain different tiers of standards.
It'd be tough. It'd be really tough to get it onto that. So.
Yeah.
You know, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say we're on the same page of wanting class sizes to be as small as they can be with existing budgetary constraints. So sometimes this gets portrayed as the district doesn't support small class sizes. That's absolutely not true. We just don't think this is the way to go about it because of what I said, that it really is just a flipping compensation structure as opposed to a true modification of what class sizes look like.
Would the district support more of a hard cap in terms of like a proposal from the association?
No, only because of the impossibility of it, you know, I mean, and that was the first proposal at PPS, but it was like, if you didn't have enough money to support the FTE to achieve that hard cap, you know, what do? You're really left with only one tool, and that is to shorten your school year, right? Because you can't lay off or you can't.
It's only one way to get money back.
Yeah, and so that is, I don't know if any of us really are like the idea of starting to have a shorter school year than we already have. Most districts and most boards aren't in favor of that, so.
So the district's saying paying people won't reduce class size and caps is not a realistic solution.
Yeah.
So what is the solution? If contractually, if we were to target, right, we've even come down from our initial proposal. We're not talking about K-12 anymore. But if we were to target a group of students or a particular group of schools or whatever it's gonna be to describe your equity model.
Well, I mean, you asked a question like, what is the solution? And then you kind of qualified it by saying contractually. I mean, otherwise I would say what the solution is, if we actually get funded at a level necessary to bring down class size, to hire more FTE and bring down class size. Get funded at a QEM model, at a level where, schools can hire enough people to do that work. I think, to me, and OEA, OSCA, OSBA, COSA are all aligned on that. We all join up and try and push that at the legislature. So,
Okay.
That to me is better funding is always going to be the answer.
Overage pay creates a new data point though, where the employer can track the amount of funds, the number of incidents that have been out there, where I think normally if someone's caseload or class size is high, it's a shrug, well, it's too bad. And so there's, not only would overage pay be an acknowledgement of the extra work that people are saddled with, but would be something that would be marked and could be studied, and tracked year over year.
Yeah, it certainly would be a data point. I mean, it's also a somewhat imprecise or rigid data point because it doesn't reflect much about who those students are, right? It's based on one component, how many rear ends are in seats. It doesn't take into account other, behavioral challenges that some kids might have. I mean, you could have a class of 25 that was more difficult than a class of 29, but the overage pay targets just the number alone and says that class deserves more pay. So it feels like an imprecise method of awarding more pay.
Do we measure ADMW per classroom?
Like use a weighted formula. I suppose you could, but that would only account for those things that factored into the weighting system. Is this a special education student? Is this a English as a second language student? Is this a pregnant student? That's probably not our biggest factor. But it wouldn't take into account, I think, probably some of the more nuanced challenges of some classes, wouldn't show.
It might be a start at least on those.
Yeah, I don't deny that it would create a data point and whatnot. Again, to me, it's a fundamental shift in our compensation model. Our compensation structure has never been based off of how many students people have in classes. It's always recognized that will fluctuate from year to year, or some classes may be more of a challenge than others. And so we're going to have a salary schedule that's kind of a more uniform way of compensation.
Did do some work at the beginning of this year, and we do every year in terms of some hot spots that pop up or enrollment that's down in one place. So we reallocate some staffing. We had 3 different schools that were impacted positively with class size at the beginning of the year. And to your point about language, like there is language about us having conversations around class size, right? And we really do. And have for many years looked at how to prioritize primary K2, especially K1. And I think you see that in our class sizes across the district. But then also to try to be monitoring where the hot spots show up. Where do the kindergartners show up? That changes sometimes year to year. So we've worked to be responsive that way. And I think this year with additional FTE, we were able to accomplish some of that.
Interesting.
Moving.
I think-
And we're gonna see some more.
I think that takes us down to the bottom of page 12. And in fact, I don't believe there are any differences in our proposal. It's like the remainder of 13. Did I miss something here?
Nope, they're the same.
Yeah.
Alright, 25. You want to do one?
Sure. I mean, 25 is not real heavy in language. It's a numbers piece. I know that we've both done financial presentations, tried to get alignment in what costing looks like and what is reasonable or not. I think we hopefully share the goal of being sustainable, but compensating people well and fairly. And so you guys had last time came back with a proposal that was 14% over 3 years. And so we've returned a proposal to you that is 12% over 3 years. So we feel like that gap has narrowed. We've kept the 4% year one. We are partway into a budgeted year. So as you create a budget for the year and then start to roll it out and live it, if you start exceeding it significantly, then you have to make adjustments within the year. That's a lot more of a challenge.
We're in the middle of the biennium.
What's that?
We're in the middle of the biennium.
Last year we told them, yeah. Same thing. Yeah, so that would be a challenge for us to emphasize year one too much because it would require mid-year adjustments after the budget's already been set. So instead, we've put additional salary into year two, bringing that up to 4% as well. And then we had also been proposing 4% year three. So I believe that leaves our years 2 and 3 as matching in our proposals. We have a change down in B. It is still, we're slightly different in our proposals. I think that we had proposed that step one not be used as an initial payment, placement calculator starting next year, the 25-26. So under our proposal, it would start with this year. So there are people that currently, once we ratified, would get a step placement adjustment, bumped up a year. As we start to reach back into more prior years, it simply becomes more of a cost factor.
Do we know the number?
Yeah, we've looked at
Because
it.
it's 3 years. It's not like we're going back
I
7
put it
years.
in
or
your
something.
in your, new costing.
Okay.
So.
And the difference is the cost of one additional step.
Correct.
Right?
Times however many people.
Right.
In that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and like Angela said, that
I
cost,
think it's about 400,000.
That's fine.
5,
Yeah, I printed off your most recent.
sorry.
one, but you
Yeah, I
don't
know,
have the
it
number
was
of
kind
members.
of a live document and I put a comment in yours, I think that's updated. So I want to say a 4 change.
Okay, yeah, you just put a round figure on
Yeah.
your doc.
And the live one though should have the updated number.
This is the latest one.
So it's not insignificant, you know, as we're trying to find resources to bring our, to a meeting point here. Okay. On to the next page, page 2, we've adopted your language there in section C. For every 2 years of non-teaching experience, 1 year of salary advancement shall be given at a minimum. So that language should now be the same in our 2 proposals.
If we have any members that were negatively impacted by that calculation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that,
documentation for it, let's say.
that'd be a good question. It's a discretionary act, right? By the
Mhm.
district, the district may grant additional steps. So we haven't talked about like, there have been other places where I bargained that we opened like an appeal window and we said if people want to come back and so I've had that in a number of places.
I think it'd be a very small number of people, so
Well, and I did bring this up last time,
Yep.
this meeting that we're gonna have retro.
that's why I
It was
brought
pretty
it up
clear
again.
with
Yeah.
Mark, like, this is totally up to the district.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep. I thought I'd broach the question.
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. And again, it's a sensible question. Like I said, I bargained out other places. I believe that the language in section I on page 4 is now the same. But I don't know that we had included that, and you would talk about it being current practice or maybe even from an MOU or something like that. Correct. So that made sense, so we brought that in. Cool. Okay, Article 29.
29.
Actually,
this one.
What they were talking about.
Yeah, so,
Sorry about our messed up edit.
yeah, no worries. I mean,
It's my fault.
we're still apart in a weird way on this article because we're actually proposing more, which
How dare you?
doesn't happen a lot. Here's our reasoning. It mirrors what the classified contract
Okay.
has.
I know you like to have that. so.
Yeah, I mean, we don't like it to get off and then later on in future bargain, then we'll be making adjustments sometimes. So, I mean, I think we're not closing the conversation on it. It just made sense to have it the same. So.
And that includes an increase for this year, even though
Correct.
we're already at the.
Yeah, I mean, you know, our hope is that we're able to resolve this contract sooner rather than later, and so there's less retro, there's less to try and, you know, kind of unpack. So those are those numbers, 1525, 1575, 1600, as allowed by OEBB, that's the same in our two proposals. The number 5 was language we forgot to incorporate from last time, so that's the same. Nothing.
Nothing, page 3.
And then we both, I think that was your language a while back, that new M, and I can't remember when we agreed to it, but, that's the same, and also striking that last paragraph. Okay. That article feels like there's not a lot of consensus stuff, but I'm gonna turn Article 31 over to Ian.
This is a lot of paper. I thought this was 2 when you gave it to me, but a lot of agreements. We are going back to original language on the pay classes. So striking the 4 and going back to the step 2 for the all extra duties.
Is there any conversation about the document I shared with the districts? Because it kind of stems
Yeah.
about what that first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we took a look. I know I took a look at it. Took a look at it, and I think it made a lot of sense. Didn't seem like we were too far away from other districts.
In terms of percentages.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, in terms of base pay. Pretty far.
Yeah, I mean, I think it for us was surely like a resource allocation. We talked about where we're gonna put some additional money into this package, like where is it best to put that?
Holistically.
Yeah, and so it is less like disagreement with your document or your numbers and more just trying to target money in a couple places, salary being one, and then I think Angela's gonna hit a couple other ones.
Yeah,
Because on your document, it's $49,000 is the.
yeah, it's not a ton.
Okay.
I totally.
Okay.
And that would be just for license.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I understand.
So you know that.
I understand.
Yeah, okay. So page 2, we're in agreement about the high school dance chaperones, $35 an hour, so I'm hoping that I can chaperone this coming year.
If you want to, I guarantee you will be able to.
I'm actually a pretty good DJ. Don't know if they can me, but I can do that. Page 3. And it's
It's below your pay grade, right?
It's I don't know if there's an amount. But we're not.
13, we're in agreement on that language. 15, we're in agreement on that language. I think that the same. And I'm sure you'll stop me if I'm wrong. Page 4, we are looking at an increase. Am I wrong?
No, you're
No.
Gosh, why is that so weird? Oh, because it's folded.
Mhm.
2 to 3.
From 2 to 3, for our DLI folks, getting their stipend at 5% of BA step 3 and step 2. We're in agreement on the stipend for multilingual folks, $2,000. And we, on letter C, would like to increase from a step 2 to a step 3 for our special education teachers. Again, going back to the caseload, I feel like this is a more even way to compensate our special education teachers, and by increasing their stipend. And in an agreement on those folks who are special education teachers who also qualify for speak another language or in a DLI school would get minimum 2 stipends to qualify. And
Is there a reason that you adjusted the step instead of the percent?
Where are we going?
Step 3 instead of higher than 5%.
Yeah.
No. Okay, I mean, we were intentionally trying to increase the amount of the stipend in both those areas, so that's just how we went about it. You know, keying it off of step 3 of.
So there was no other rationale. Cool, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
nothing on page 5. So you'll notice on page 6, this is new.
Yeah.
But, and it's only because it was an MOU that we sign every year.
Oh, okay.
And I literally just copied and pasted the language from the MOU.
Okay.
For the BCBA,
Yeah.
specialist. And if we're okay with just making it codified in the that's the MOU, we don't have to sign.
One less.
Okay. Good.
PGA.
Only 4 days.
Yeah. that's good. Stu, nothing else on page 6. We've agreed to the robotics on page 7. OST coordinators on page 8. No new language on page 9. We've agreed to your language about folks who are getting trained to drive. That will cover their time away from work at ATTW to be able to go and get trained to drive the vans. I think this is already happening in some places, so we just want to make sure that that's there in the contract.
Capture that.
And page 11, these cheer and dance and folks. I know that Ryan has a little more information about that. We were trying to figure out if there was,
Yeah,
extended season. for
so I reached out to both other high schools and they both felt that there really aren't extended seasons for
I
those.
think you're right about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it really was like, yeah, well, they know what they're getting
They
into.
go to their final competition at the
Yep,
end of the season.
exactly.
They don't go anywhere after.
Right, right.
Okay.
That was the reasoning for that piece there. And have we come to the last journal?
Yeah.
The 34, we are in agreement on that.
Well, we didn't ask about it. So what about the ones at the end, the last page 11?
Oh, sorry.
Skilled USA
Yeah, those
robotics.
were also ones that.
Like they had a
thought they didn't
scheduled
have
year.
to.
They were scheduled, but there wasn't, yeah.
There wasn't like a
There wasn't
qualified to
yeah,
get.
there was nothing to go.
There's no
on.
nationals that they
Exactly.
qualify for?
Oh,
Okay, because there used to be for robotics.
I would say like, yeah, I thought robotics has that, but I also not been.
They do their local competition and then they can advance. Okay,
I mean, if you have different information about those, then that's just what we had said.
Yeah, I mean, my focus was a lot on the, on
Yeah,
high
yeah.
school, so if you find something else at the middle school level, then let us know.
okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
That's what we have.
you.
All other articles are PA.
All of the- How would you like to proceed? Evening, we have lunch, dinner,
Let's grab food and caucus.
food, coffee.
food and caucus, yeah.
Yes.
Thinking about the discussion that we just had about caps. And. You're saying that what we're proposing. It would be cheaper to just pay people the overage than to hire more staff. We can adjust our proposal to make it more effective to hire staff. And I'm saying that facetiously a little bit because we asked you a question and your answer didn't feel like it was very
Which question?
about what would be an actual solution. And for
Yeah.
you to say that we should be funded, I mean, that's out of the hands of everybody in this room.
Well, directly out of the hands. I mean, I think everybody plays a role in trying to lobby to get that funding as high as possible. So, but do any of us have direct control of that? Certainly not.
Right, so it feels a little bit disrespectful, to be honest, that you would say that at this table.
It's
We're
because,
here to talk about the things that we can control.
sure, absolutely. I don't believe that there's a contractual way to guarantee class size because it's always a function of budget. It's always a function of resource. So you could put caps in the contract and say no class will be over 25, but when the money didn't show up to facilitate that or allow it, but your contract required it, your only recourse would be to cut every program to the bone and then cut school days so you could achieve a class size. Like when there's insufficient funding, there are only very few tools that the district has to account for that because 80% of the budget is in personnel. So you either lay off people or you cut the work year or you cut program. But lay off people wouldn't be an option anymore because you wouldn't be able to meet your class size caps anymore. So you would be left with shortening your school year by a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, which I don't believe the board has an interest in doing. So I legitimately am not trying to be disrespectful. I legitimately, having bargained for 25 years, have not ever seen a contractual solution to the class size question, because it is a function of budget, it's a function of funding.
But to Bruce's point, to even provide even a nominal amount is an acknowledgement that of the work that we're doing and the work that happens when you have a larger class. And sure, I get your point that sometimes the smaller class is more difficult. I've had that class of 23, that was bananas. And I had a class of 28, that was like the most calm and peaceful, I've had that. But having experienced that, I would still argue, and I think most people in this room would still argue, that having a larger class is more work, because there is a certain amount of work that just goes into every single student. And to acknowledge that that is more work and that we are trying to serve our students the best that we can, and that takes more time and effort if there are more students. If it costs you more money, then that gives you another reason to go to the state and lobby and say, this is how much it costs to serve each student.
Sure.
So if you want to talk about lobbying, and you want to talk about like actually trying to get more money, doesn't this give you an opportunity, a way to do that?
You could designate that as the new compensation model, but we have finite resources, so it would come from somewhere else. We wouldn't be proposing a 4% salary increase if we had to dedicate money instead to those overage payments. It would be a lower COLA, or it would be less on the stipends for special ed or for DLI. The pie doesn't get any bigger. We're just talking about how to cut the pie up. And so even if we were to agree, like, yeah, let's start compensating people based on class size, then what we're proposing in other parts of the contract would go down because it doesn't free up more money.
And we're not opposed to that. We're trying to have a discussion. You guys just keep striking the whole thing, right? So we're trying to do some back and forth, and you just keep coming back with no about it. And we're not even engaging in a conversation around it.
I disagree with that. I mean, I think we are having the conversation about the merits of that type of a system compared to our current system. I understand that you disagree with our proposed solution, which is to keep paying primarily on the salary schedule and having that increase by COLAs and by steps. So I understand that there may be some disagreement with that, but I think we're having the conversation of the merits of it. We simply don't agree that that is a better compensation model than the salary schedule structure that we currently have.
Well, I think characterizing it as the sole compensation model is disingenuous too. I mean, we're talking about portion a payment for an overage, which it doesn't even approach what a salaried employee earns, just because of the numbers of years of experience and the amount of education that they have. So I don't agree that it's somehow grandly shifting, as I feel you're characterizing, the way that we go about paying teachers.
I think it's a shift in philosophy. And I think that it would also be not the end to that shift in philosophy, because the very few districts where it's in place, the next bargain, high school is in it, middle school is in it. And then, it expands. I mean, that's just the nature of bargaining and the nature of what that ends up looking like. So, again, we've chosen to put the resources we felt were available on the salary schedule because we think that impacts the highest number of your members.
And I'll just kind of split the difference there and say, it was not our intent for it to be a compensation model. Compensation is something we have access to for all of our schools and all of our members, right? We don't have class cap sizes available to all of our members. And so this was a way we could try and do something for all of our members. Our intent is not to get necessarily people paid more if they have more kids. Our intent is to get less kids into people's classrooms.
Sure.
That is our goal.
But you understand how that's not the result.
No, I don't think, right. So that's, like I said, I mean, just kind of splitting the difference. That was our intent.
Understood.
When it comes to eating, Is there anything else
What did you say about Eber?
when it comes to, taking a break in caucusing? We'd like to meet with our folks in our unit who would, like to stay and discuss,
For sure.
your counter proposal.
So you're saying get your stuff and get out?
That's the way it's possible.
That's a nice way of saying it, you can't all fit in that one.
How much time do you want us to give you before we come back in? Pick up, whatever.
Pick up what you want now, right?
Oh, I thought you.
No.
Don't leave food with Mark and then expect to come back and have something.
Thirty
That's a mistake.
And just let us know.